Welcome to Medieval Uncovered, where we peel back the layers of history to reveal the raw, unfiltered truth of the past. I'm standing in the heart of a snow-covered English village in 1320, where the air is so cold, my breath freezes mid-sentence, and the wind feels like it's slicing through my bones. If I stand still, my boots might just freeze to the ground. This is winter in the Middle Ages, a season that didn't just chill you, it dared you to survive. No electric heaters, no grocery stores, just a relentless cold that could bury you alive. Yet the peasants here, ordinary folks like you and me, turned this frozen nightmare into a masterclass in survival. Today we'll walk through their snow-packed world, uncovering how they transformed hay into cozy beds, mud into fortress walls, and even cows into living heaters. Stick with Medieval Uncovered as we dive into their ingenious tricks, hear gripping stories, and uncover a timeless lesson about resilience that'll leave you inspired. Hit that subscribe button, and let's brave the cold together. We're in Northern Europe, where winter wasn't just a season, it was a life-or-death showdown. Historical records from the 13th and 14th centuries show temperatures in England and France could plummet to 0 degrees Fahrenheit or below. Imagine stepping outside and feeling your eyelashes freeze shut. For the 90% of the population who were peasants, winter meant no cozy Netflix nights, just a months-long battle to stay alive. No synthetic jackets, no food delivery apps. If you didn't plan ahead, you wouldn't see spring. What blows my mind is how these peasants didn't just scrape by. They outsmarted the cold with nothing but their wits and whatever was lying around. Hay, wool, mud. Even their livestock became tools in their survival arsenal. Let's start our journey where they rested their weary heads, the humble haybed. Picture this, it's 5 a.m., pitch black, and your house feels colder than a freezer. You roll out of bed, but it's not a mattress, it's a pile of hay, maybe 2 feet thick, spread across a dirt floor that's frozen solid. This was the daily reality for medieval peasants. Archaeological digs at sites like Warham Percy in England reveal haybeds were a cornerstone of their homes. In summer, they'd harvest fresh hay, bundle it up, and stack it high in winter to keep their bodies off the icy ground. It sounds basic, but hay was a stroke of brilliance. When packed tightly, it trapped tiny air pockets that acted like natural insulation. Think medieval bubble wrap. A 2018 study from the University of York found that a well-made haybed could retain up to 70% of your body heat, even in sub-zero temperatures. Not bad for something you'd find in a cow's breakfast. There was a catch though. Haybeds were a magnet for pests. Mice burrowed in for warmth, and bugs treated it like an all-you-can-eat buffet. A 14th century French chronicle tells of a peasant named Guillaume, who woke up to find a hen had laid an egg in his bed. Talk about breakfast in bed. To keep things fresh, peasants swapped out old hay regularly, as compressed hay lost its fluff and warmth over time. It wasn't luxurious, but it was a clever hack that turned farm scraps into a lifeline. Let's meet Agnes, a widow in Yorkshire, 1320, raising 2 kids in a tiny thatched hut. Every evening, Agnes piles fresh hay onto the floor, patting it down like she's kneading bread. Her son Thomas and daughter Edith giggle as they burrow into the hay, pretending they're bears hibernating. But Agnes isn't smiling. She knows the stakes. Last winter, her neighbour's boy caught a fever from sleeping too close to the cold ground and didn't make it. One night, a blizzard howls outside. Agnes wakes to a mouse scurrying across her blanket. She sighs, shakes out the hay, and adds a layer of dried moss she gathered last fall. It's not glamorous, but it works. By morning, the family is warm, and Thomas proudly shows off an egg he found in the hay, a small win in a season of struggles. Stories like Agnes's show that survival wasn't just about enduring, it was about finding joy in the little victories. If hay was the hero of the bedroom, wool was the champion of the outdoors. Peasants practically lived in wool. A single family might own 20 pounds of wool clothing, enough to fill a small suitcase. Wool was a lifesaver because it kept you warm even when soaked. Modern tests show wet wool retains 80% of its insulating power, letting peasants trudge through snowstorms without turning into icicles. Every spring, peasants traded for raw wool from shepherds. Then came the hard part: cleaning, carding, and spinning it into thread. Making one tunic could take days, forget fast fashion. But the effort paid off. Wool's natural lanolin made it water-resistant, so rain and snow slid right off. Sure, it smelled like a wet sheepdog, but staying dry was worth it. Here's the kicker: peasants rarely washed wool in winter. Sounds gross, but it was smart. Wet wool in freezing temperatures was a recipe for disaster. A German tale tells of a guy who washed his wool coat midwinter, and it froze so stiff it could stand upright. Locals called it Hans's iron cloak. Wool had its downsides though. It attracted fleas like nobody's business. Peasants hung their clothes near the fire's smoke to drive the critters away, even if it left them smelling like a mix of sheep and campfire. Medieval cologne, anyone? Wool alone couldn't beat the cold, so peasants mastered the art of layering, not for style, but for survival. Archaeological finds from Novgorod show they wore 4 to 7 layers on the coldest days. Linen shirts, wool tunics, sleeveless jerkins, and fur-lined cloaks, if they were lucky. A rope belt held it all together, less for fashion and more to keep the pile from sliding off. Getting dressed was a workout. A 13th century monk wrote of a peasant who got so tangled in his layers that his wife had to roll him around like a barrel to free him. Kids had it tough too, bundled so tightly they waddled like penguins. A Bavarian chronicler described winter children as round bundles, rolling down hills because they couldn't bend their knees. It's funny, but it shows how seriously they took staying warm. Modern science agrees. Multiple thin layers trap air better than one thick coat, a trick mountaineers still use. Meet Johann, a teenager in Norfolk, 1340. Johann dreads winter mornings, because getting dressed feels like wrestling a bear. His mum, Hilda, insists on 5 layers: a linen shift, 2 wool tunics, a jerkin, and a cloak that smells like the family sheep. Johann grumbles, but knows the alternative: frostbite. One day, he sneaks out with just 3 layers, thinking he's tough. Halfway to the barn, his fingers go numb, and his teeth chatter like castanets. When he stumbles back, Hilda's waiting with a smirk and an extra tunic. "Layers save lives," she says, handing him a bowl of hot stew. Johann's story hits home because we've all cut corners and paid the price. For him, it was a freezing walk. For us, it might be skipping a deadline or ignoring a warning. The peasants teach us that preparation isn't sexy, but it's non-negotiable. Step inside a peasant's home, and you'll spot the heart of it: a fire pit in the middle, ringed by stones. It wasn't a cozy fireplace, more like a smoky hazard. Only about 15% of the heat stayed in the room. The rest escaped through a roof hole that also let snow in. Chimneys? Too fancy for peasants. The air was thick with smoke, like living in a perpetual barbecue. Starting the fire was a daily quest. Peasants kept a coal alive overnight in ashes. Lose it, and you'd trek to a neighbour's, maybe carrying a hot coal in a hollowed-out turnip, as a 14th century tale describes. Fuel was anything burnable. Old furniture, borrowed fences, even an abandoned barn one desperate winter, per English village records. Smoke was a double-edged sword. It stung your eyes and probably shaved years off your life, but it repelled bugs and preserved roof beams. Modern tests on medieval timbers confirm the soot's protective effect. Each family had tricks: sleeping in shifts to tend the fire, or whispering to the flames when adding wood, though that might have been the smoke making them a bit loopy. Imagine a family in France, 1290. Marie, her husband Peter, and their 3 kids are asleep when a gust blows out their precious coal. The room goes dark, and the cold creeps in like an intruder. Peter, stubborn as ever, refuses to bother the neighbours. He wraps the kids in extra wool and spins tales of summer harvests to keep their spirits up. By morning, they're shivering but alive. Marie trudges through snow, trades a turnip for a coal, and restarts the fire. The kids cheer like it's Christmas. This story shows the power of teamwork. Marie and Peter didn't panic. They leaned on each other. In our solo-driven world, it's a reminder that survival often hinges on community. After a day of dodging frostbite, peasants needed food to keep going. Enter the perpetual stew, a pot hanging over the fire, 24/7, filled with whatever they had: turnips, parsnips, maybe a scrap of salted meat if luck was on their side. Historical records say families used 7 or 8 core ingredients, preserved from summer harvests. Veggies were stored in sand, meat was smoked or salted. Wild herbs like poor man's pepper added flavour and fought off colds. Cooking was a team effort. Everyone tossed in something: a carrot, a pinch of barley, even tree bark in dire times. One record mentions a family boiling their wooden spoon for flavour. Grim? Sure, but it shows their ingenuity. These stews weren't gourmet, but they were lifelines. Flash to a German village in 1310, battered by a brutal blizzard. The harvest was poor, and food is scarce. Greta, known for her stew, rallies her neighbours. She sets up a giant pot in the village square, asking each family to contribute one thing: a turnip, a bone, some herbs. At first, people hoard their scraps, but Greta's warmth wins them over. By week's end, the pot's brimming, feeding everyone. They share stories around the fire, and the cold feels less cruel. Greta's stew mirrors modern community efforts, like food drives. When we pool resources, we're unstoppable. The peasants knew this, and it's a lesson we can borrow. Now for the wild part. Peasants shared their homes with animals in winter. Cows, pigs, chickens, even sheep moved indoors, taking up 30% of the space per archaeological studies. Why? Heat. A cow pumped out 5,000 BTUs per hour, like a furry radiator. Pigs were portable heaters. Chickens warmed your feet. But it wasn't all cuddly. Imagine eating dinner while a pig sniffs your bowl, or waking to a rooster crowing in your face. Peasants built low barriers to manage the chaos, but records say the animals ignored them. Still, the trade-off was worth it. Animals also kept the air humid, making the room feel 3 to 4 degrees warmer, a fact modern science confirms. Meet Erik, a Danish peasant in 1330, with a nemesis, his rooster. Red. Every winter, Erik brings the animals inside and Red takes it personally. One night, Red crows right in Erik's ear, waking the whole family. Erik, half asleep, chases Red around the hut, tripping over a pig and knocking over a water bucket. His wife, Ingrid, laughs till she cries. By morning, they strike a deal. Red gets a perch by the window and Erik gets to sleep. This story's a riot because it's so human. Even in the Middle Ages, people dealt with quirky pets and family chaos. It's proof that humour can brighten the darkest winters. Peasant homes were built to fight the cold. Many were dug 3 to 4 feet into the ground, tapping the earth's steady 50-55 degree for insulation. Walls mixed mud, straw and dung, gross but effective, cutting heat loss by 60% per modern tests. Roofs were layered with thatch and turf, sometimes sprouting grass for stability. Doors faced away from the wind, and cracks were stuffed with mud to block drafts. Some peasants recycled stones from Roman ruins, much to the local lord's annoyance. It wasn't pretty, but these homes were bunkers, prioritizing survival over style. In a Scottish village, 1300, Fiona builds her family's hut, using her late father's tricks. She digs deep into the hillside, packs the walls with mud and straw, and tops it with turf. When a massive snowstorm hits, neighbours' roofs collapse, but Fiona's stands firm. Her family stays warm, and soon villagers beg for her secrets. Fiona teaches them her father's methods, turning her loss into a legacy. Fiona's story is about passing down wisdom. Her father's knowledge saved her family, and she shared it. That's the real warmth in tough times. Outside, blizzards could swallow you whole. Peasants used wooden snow shovels, heavy but efficient, moving 30% more snow than modern plastic ones, per recreations. They planted sticks along paths as markers, sometimes painted with berry juice, medieval GPS. Mittens, not gloves, kept hands warmer by letting fingers share heat, a fact thermal studies back. They also read nature's cues. Cows cuddling, storms coming, pigs gathering straw, cold snap ahead. It was like a furry weather app. So, what's the big takeaway from this icy journey? It's not just hay beds or wool tunics, it's resilience. Medieval peasants faced a world that seemed hell-bent on crushing them, yet they didn't just survive. They built lives full of ingenuity, community, and even laughter. Every layer of wool, every coal in the fire, was a defiant stand against the odds. We all face winters, not snowstorms, but challenges that feel insurmountable. The peasants show us that survival starts with what's in front of you. Use what you've got, lean on your people, and don't be afraid to laugh at the chaos. That's the medieval survival guide, and it's as true today as it was 700 years ago. Thanks for joining Medieval Uncovered on this frosty adventure. If you loved this dive into history, smash that like button, share with a friend, and subscribe for more stories that bring the past to life. Drop a comment. What's your favourite medieval survival trick? Until next time, stay warm and keep fighting your own winters.